First question, please provide a brief recap of your professional credentials and your work experience related to the opportunity before you this afternoon.
Yeah, so my work history, I've been in municipal or county government for my entire life. Apart from, also I was in the National Guard and active duty military, retired. What I've done to set myself, even when I was in law enforcement, for many of the years, I was married to a council member, and the mayor of one of the towns was always kept me involved on commissions, economic development, and eventually my peers, were in public administration. That was kind of my motive. I continued as I moved through the ranks in law enforcement, executive leadership. I was a medium-sized sheriff's office in Iowa, focused on development, new jail, and we turned it into a public safety center, county public safety center, and a joint communications dispatch center. And I just realized at that point, my career wasn't really in law enforcement or law enforcement administration, but as much as the public, the city management, and just focusing on project management like that. I took an opportunity to finish my master's degree in a community here in West Liberty, where I'm at now. I took the police chief's job. It was a vacancy. And just to allow me some time to focus on my master's degree and my certified public manager's courses. Timeliness is of the essence, I guess, because shortly after I arrived, the city manager left, and I'd only been there a couple of months. The finance officer and the city clerk came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to recommend you as our interim while we do the search." And I accepted that. The mayor came to me and said, "That's great," because he was going to try and fill in, and decided it was more time than he could invest. And I was the interim. The consultant came to me after that and said they'd like to see your name in the group of finalists. And 6 months later, I was hired full time. Since I've been here, I've completed my certified public manager's course. I'm currently on the ICMA for review for the certified ICMA city manager credentials, and I've had my master's degree.
Is there any follow-up questions from the board? Next question. Please tell us why you are interested in this position.
Well, I firmly believe when you get to a certain point in a position where you things begin to align, and I've met my goals, and that's exactly what has happened. When I came to this city, they lost a bond rating. They had gone down in a bond rating. Their finances were very concerning. They were borrowing funds from utilities to carry other utilities, and I will say in the 6 years I've been here, we've turned that around. We haven't increased the bond rating. That is targeted for the next couple of years. However, you can see all of our financial audit reports online, where there's been a steady growth and increase in revenues since 2013. Along with that, we've realigned our comprehensive plan. We've annexed property. We are developing housing developments, and it's just kind of that point where I've met my challenges here, and my goal is to relocate over to the East Coast, and we have family all down the coast, and continue my experiences and challenges. When I saw Madeira Beach opened up, I just kind of began reviewing some of the progress and things that was going along there, and that felt in line with what I've accomplished, and additionally opportunities for me to continue my growth as well as the city.
Great. Any follow-up questions from the board? Okay. What are your 3 main professional goals for the next 5 to 10 years?
So ideally, it's challenging myself and finding opportunity that aligns with myself and a city, and finishing those goals. I've achieved my master's degree. I've considered going on with my doctorate, but I think I'm at that point. I was also a volunteer member of Team Rubicon as an executive role, and I just found that I want to focus on community and focus on development and projects. So that's kind of where I've landed and where I'm at, and believe in governance and unification and sustainability.
Any follow-up from the board? Okay, the mayor has a follow-up.
What experience do you have with redevelopment projects? In particular, how do you balance development to preserve a small-town feel?
Were you able to get that question?
No, Jonathan, could you repeat?
Okay. The question was, what experience do you have in redevelopment projects, and how do you ensure or sustain a small-town community feel?
So I believe when it comes into development and in redevelopment, to develop in accordance with preservation. I believe in looking at preserving the condition of a community in its current state and how it's been built out, and build onto that so you don't have that urban sprawl. So I believe in, like I said, development and redevelopment in accordance with preservation. My background has been just that. We've acquired property, and our focus has been in just the tradition of what this community has been. Prior to here, even when I was in law enforcement, my wife, she was in economic development, and we took advantage of business opportunities, and we've always focused on preservation and integrity, and I think that also helps with your sustainability.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Next question. What are the most important characteristics and attributes of an effective manager? And of these attributes, which one best describes your character/demeanor?
I believe you have to be calm, innovative, and, you know, I believe in strong governance. One of those describes me as, I very rarely, I'm very calm, and I believe in that approach to everything I deal with. I don't believe there's time where you have to make decisions that could turn out to be reckless without, you know, knee-jerk reactions. I believe in taking time, looking at the second and third order of effects before a decision's made, and weighing out the consequences. And I believe that says a lot for what I've done and my accomplishments, both personally and professionally.
Any follow-ups from the board? Next question. What do you believe is the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity this position offers?
You know, it's very dependent on community, because I've sat on committees for other communities that have had challenges and opportunities, just to help me as a more of a consulting role to help resolve issues. So I think, you know, it is community dependent, but I think unity is a big thing. You know, your employees are your biggest asset, but it's also helping align your employees with the goal and whatever your council and commission is. And I believe as a city manager drives progress, he is also that fulcrum between the employees, the public, and the council. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is just the balancing act and making sure that everybody is unified in their decision, and is unity of command, is unity of effort. And I believe it works its way from the top to down to the newest employee.
Any follow-ups from the board? Next question. city seeks to embark on a major infrastructure plan, and a general millage increase may be one of the mechanisms that is used to fund the debt services associated with the plan. What measures would you take to ensure that the money is utilized judiciously, and how would you anticipate managing the projects to ensure that they come in below budget and on time?
So I think that's just the primary job, one of the primary jobs of like I said before, the city manager drives progress. You can drive it however, I don't believe it has to be pushed down and rapid. It's slow and concise, working with those engineers and making sure that that millage or that bonding that's put in place to fund this project, that you're meeting those standards. And I don't believe that there's a bonding group out there or a securities group that would risk it without making sure that the funding is in place prior to bonding, and then it's just making sure that you live up to that commitment. Particularly if you don't, you're going to have to come up with those funds in another manner. And if you're looking at the millage rate to be the purpose for funding, you're not going to get away from it. I mean, you're going to be tied to that for the period of time. So again, researching all the options prior to securing the bonding. I came into a very reckless bonding process when I came here and had to stop a couple of projects because they were not being developed in line with what was secured. So I think it's important to make sure everything is laid out in advance and the public is communication has been transparent.
Any follow-up questions from the board? Next question. How do you monitor the success/progress of the team you lead?
So I believe in personnel evaluations, and I believe in setting out goals for those that report directly to me, and I have that expectation for every superintendent or department head, directorate, that they're setting out the goals. And I believe in just that unified command that everybody knows the concept, the mission, and where the city is headed, and that it's just reinforced regularly, and make sure that that's the bottom line, is where we're headed, so everybody can stay in tune and everybody knows. Not at a time that you shouldn't be able to walk up to a junior employee and have a casual conversation to get a feel for where, get their outlook of where the city's at and where it's headed. And that comes through mission statements and just continual repeating and discussing those goals and efforts.
Any follow-up questions from the board? Next question. Describe your experience working with citizens from various cultural backgrounds. What approach have you used to ensure adequate attention is given to the varying needs of these groups?
Well, our city was the first city in the state of Iowa to be designated as a majority minority community. We are 54% Latino population, second and third generation, because instantly people look at that and say, oh, it's immigrants, and that is not the case. This is second, third, fourth generation families that have lived here. Very strong Latino culture. I believe in breaking down those barriers. I believe in breaking down barriers and giving people the opportunity and making them participative in the governance process, so everybody is welcome.
In a concise manner, please describe how you would develop and implement a strategic plan for the city of Madeira Beach.
So strategic planning is the concept I've worked on and implemented here, as well as in my law enforcement agencies, and we were designing and developing public safety centers. And that's, I believe in setting with the council and those directorates and outlining what the accomplishments have been and what it is we want to accomplish. And that gets it from the department head or the director, because they should have that on-the-ground understanding of what their capital needs are, and the opportunity to visit with the council to prioritize where they want them to be. And putting that capital improvement or that strategic plan to place and giving it, we utilize it in what I've seen and from my training and background and experience is about 2 years, because you can focus on projects, you can implement a project, and you can begin crossing them off. And then that sets the stage for the next 2 years, because not very often you accomplish them all in 1 year. And if it is, it's either halfway accomplished or it's already been set in place. By the time you come around to that second year, completing projects, it's time to begin and take a new, fresh look with the same elements. New councils come and go, department heads and directorates go, and employees. So it can change the focus and just sit down and again build out the comprehensive plan, the strategic planning for the next 24 months. And if you have projects that are still underway, then you finish those out, but your focus then aligns with your future projects.
Any follow-ups from the board? What can a government accomplish during an economic downturn when revenues decline and the city seeks to provide consistent services?
What can a government accomplish?
Yes.
I think that's providing governance and standardization and unification. I believe if you can continue to, governance is what we're bound on, and don't default, that your sustainability can get you through the government downturn. I've seen it, I've been a part of it back as far as the 80s when I was, the government and the farming crisis to the most recent with the stock market crashes back in 2008 and the housing scares. I just believe if you continue to standardization, governance, and building in accordance with your preservation, you're going to be consistent.
Any follow-up questions? Okay. And the last standardized question I have is, how quickly can you start after an approved contract?
I'm at a point with this community, I have 30 days in my contract, and I would just say approved contract, it would be right around that 30 days, because I'm at a point that all of our projects, we are just finished up our strategic planning. We are going in, and the only thing I have pending, and I appreciate your opportunity to allow me, is we have a $40 million merger right now that is July 1st, we take it over, and that's what we're working on this week. And had it been any other week of the year, I guarantee you I'd be sitting in front of you today, but that merger kicks off July 1, and it should be on coast mode. The departments, the people I have selected that are in place, and I believe at that point I've reached every accomplishment I can, and I would say in 3 weeks to 30 days, I'm available to relocate.
That concludes my standardized questions. Now this is an opportunity for the board to ask any questions that they may have, and I will try to reiterate their questions as best as I can.
Also, all has the same question.
And if we can make sure that the board asks the same questions that you asked the previous candidate.
Okay. Mr. McNaul, this is, okay? All right? Okay, Mr. McNaul, this is Vice Mayor Nancy Hodges. I have 2 questions for you. The first one I have is tourism is our main focus here. How would you implement ideas or concerns to their continued success?
implement ideas, but I couldn't tell what the focus was.
The question was that tourism is the main focus here, and how would you implement ideas and
Concerns,
concerns regarding
their
their
success.
success?
Oh, absolutely. So, again, I believe that's all in your development and your, what you believe your comprehensive plan is to build out and your focus. And tourism is important. I think advertising is huge right now for everybody in the tourism, and finding that niche to get ahead of it, because we are in the age of social media, and we need to be utilizing every effort of that to reach out to the young, the old, the middle-aged. It doesn't matter. It's just getting their attention and finding what, and I believe we already know, I mean, what Madeira has to offer in its assets, and just focusing on that through advertisement, through all methods of communication.
Thank you. I have one more question for you. Grants are important for projects that we need to have done. How often in the past did you apply for grants, and what is your success rate?
So I have been grant-driven my entire career in law enforcement, whether it was a position to allocate somebody into a role. I also, so I was on the state executive committee for the state legislative committee, where we reviewed grants from smaller law enforcement agencies, and I've been successful. I've secured well over, I added this up once. Hasn't always been the most recent of questions, but at least $5 million in grants, and the most recent one was a $1 million grant I received from the state of Iowa and the Department of Natural Resources for recycling efforts, and to build a recycling center, go curbside recycling. Prior to that, we had a community drop-off that just wasn't functioning and operating, and the grant I wrote and that I authored was for the tune of $1 million. We were awarded that full amount to implement curbside recycling and put in a recycling center for basically a staging, which the state of Iowa has now taken interest in and would like us to add on to it and make it a regional drop-off for smaller communities. So it's kind of turned into a business venture, but not one that we've come full circle on yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
The next series of questions are going to be asked by Commissioner Andrews.
Lawrence, how you doing?
Good, Commissioner.
Yeah, great. Hey, thank you for your service to our country before we get started. And excellent use of the word fulcrum, by the way. I enjoyed that. What I do like about you is your city and our city are very similar sized and staffed. I do have a question for you, and I think I've answered my own question. I'm just trying to follow your resume. You were the police chief of the same town you're now city manager of, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool. And the county sheriff's office, when it says chief deputy, it looks to me like you were more of an administrator than a police officer, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. No, I mean, because you did some great things there too. I saw the $750,000 in grants and the likes of that. That's all I have. Besides, my last question is: have you ever been to Madeira Beach?
I have not.
Okay.
My wife has been through there, but we have family in St. Pete.
Okay.
And they told me it was at St. Pete Beach, and they told me it's a wonderful community.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Any other follow-up questions from the board?
I have two questions. Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
All right. These questions are going to be asked by Commissioner Weinstein.
Hi, Lawrence. I'm Debbie Weinstein, Commissioner in our city, and I just have 3 questions I'd like to ask you. The first one is, in your current community, and with as being city manager, what is your feeling, what's your policy about the individual commissioners communicating directly with employees or with department heads with regards to conflicts, problems, questions, et cetera? Do you have the theory that you like for them to go through you? Do you like it for them to go directly to the departments? How do you feel about that?
I think it's very hard for department heads to delineate the chain of command, if you will, when you have council members who, you know, even if a person's inquiring, sometimes it becomes crossed as a directive. And although that I would never deter somebody. I think, you know, they should be used to seeing, but it does help if that communication, or if there's a need for something to be done, that it is kind of a line through your city manager, just to help affect the change and eliminate any confusions.
That answers it. Thank you. One more. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
No.
Okay. What's your policy about prior to, say, workshop meetings or commission meetings? Do you like now to talk with your individual commissioners with regards to their perspectives, as opposed, and also with regards to your perspectives on certain issues that might, that will probably come up, just to get a feeling for what's going on?
I believe transparency is huge in today's government, but I also believe in making sure that the message is consistent. Not all commissioners are always as available, and it doesn't mean they're as productive. It just means they have other ways that they provide their attributes. But sometimes I know some council members feel disenfranchised because they may not have the ability to stop in or meet up or see at a project site when there's a situation or a development that's underway. So I encourage and I appreciate communication, and I like that to be participated from all members when possible. So I think that's why those planning meetings or those work sessions are designed to keep the communication consistent. And I always encourage that, hey, I've had an opportunity to visit with Commissioner Hodges, and we talked about this, and this is a new perspective. So I would never hide the fact that I spoke to another council member, but I always try to keep track of what we talked about so we can look and see if that affects a project and get the input from the other. Sometimes that becomes another balancing act of being able to, but I think if we work on those work sessions is the best in what they're designed to do.
Okay. Do you currently do a newsletter to the constituents, to the people in West Liberty? Do you like doing that? Do you do it on a monthly basis? Our city manager currently spends some time doing that for our citizens, and it's just been greatly appreciated by lots of people.
Sure. Yes, so that is not something we have implemented here. Our mayor likes to do it, and that's been kind of his outreach, is just updating and providing, and it's not a regularly done thing, but if that's something that you'd rather see come from the city manager, and I have read Jonathan's, one of his reports, and I think it's very neat. I think it's informative and keeps people, and I do believe in communication and transparency, and if that's what's working, that'd be something that you'd want to keep up.
Okay, because it really does embrace a lot of the citizenry. It makes them want to be involved, and it keeps them up to date on what's happening, not necessarily pipe dreams or future stuff, but what's happening right now. So thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
We have some questions from the mayor.
First, question is, what is the biggest mistake you have made, and what did you learn from it?
Did you hear that one?
Jonathan, I didn't.
Okay. What's the biggest mistake you have made, and what have you learned from it?
I think again, I think it's taking a calm, resistive approach to some measures. And while this may seem small, the smallest things can become the largest, most complex issues that we work in government. And here, in this last 2 years, we have a Statue of Liberty that sat in front of City Hall that had been just neglected and deteriorated over years. And as we were putting in and looking at it, the cost to refurbish it was very costly. And we were trying to determine if we should take it down because we're looking at relocating City Hall. So the council made the decision that we would take down the statue. And we thought about the discussion because should we solicit the input? Is this something that we should advertise just to get feedback? And the concern, I guess it wasn't even a concern. It was, well, it's there and it's falling down. Let's just take it down. And the motion and the action took place to do that. And the night that that took place, the following week, public hadn't paid attention maybe, or hadn't been and watched the media or discussions or the minutes. But when that statue started to come down, the public came out in droves, and not just public locally, people who have relocated that were fundraisers of this thing back 60-some years ago, whose family members, one gentleman who was a Boy Scout that collected coat hangers to collect money to build this statue, the input. And I think we were on the right track, but because things started getting ramped up in the meeting, the directive, the statue is going back up where it was, even though it wasn't destroyed. And if you happen to Google statues of West Liberty, you would see, that it was, there was concerns that it was destroyed and it was hidden somewhere, and it wasn't. It was taken down fully with the intent of replacing it. It was just location and trying to preserve it. But that wasn't it. We didn't have time to get that out because we took quick steps. And I think that's where I believe in preservation when we're developing is communicating, and transparency and communication is the utmost importance.
Thank you. And how do you build consensus among groups with different objectives and agendas?
The mayor asked, how do you build consensus amongst different groups with different objectives
And agendas.
and agendas?
Yep, I think that's the number one challenge and welcome is with the city manager and with myself as my personal drive is break down barriers, help educate people, determine what their objective is and their agenda, and try to find a middle ground and bring them into the fold, make them a part of the solution. And I've actually created more council members over the years and that would run for council just to be a part after they started learning some of these processes. And not challenging council members, but to think, wow, there's a vacant seat. You know what? Maybe I'll fill that seat because they've learned something. And I don't like to just disenfranchise anybody to take them away from their ideas ain't good enough. So, I like to hear what people have to say. I like to be approachable, and I like to be visible, and just stay up front of the negative side of communication in groups.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from the board? All right. Mr. McNaul, I think that concludes the questions from the Board of Commissioners as well, and we want to thank you for taking the time to spend with us, and again, thank you for your service to our nation.
Okay, well, thanks again for everybody and for the opportunity to interview. And I know it wasn't ideal with the phone and considered just not doing it, but I thought I was here. I appreciate you, Jonathan, for giving me the opportunity. And I am a firm, I'm a business oriented, and I believe in having a good time, but I also believe in getting the work done to get there. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You have a great rest of your day.
All right. So I suppose we'll take a 5-minute recess for the next candidate.
Okay.
Okay.